After identifying a possible positive COVID case on campus, we would isolate out that individual. We work in pods as far as the teams are concerned, so students participating with that individual are in groups of 10. We would self-quarantine those 10 young men at their homes, tell them to stay home, follow the Los Angeles County guidelines on how to self-quarantine, and at the same time notify the parents so that they all have an understanding of what's going on. We would then notify the county to see if we have to initiate any task force, COVID task force implementations. Usually though, as long as we have below 3 hits or positive signs on campus, we don't have to go into the county situation. We would usually just have those 10 students plus the 1 to 2 coaches self-quarantine for 14 days, make sure that they stay away from campus, preferably stay in a home away from others, and protect the other individuals and their families, let alone the community, from potentially being inflicted with COVID. So also the goal would be to ask the individual who possibly tested positive how long they believe they've been showing signs, so we could make sure we knew the asymptomatic schedule and recommend testing to others, although not mandatory. We would just ask them at that point to self-quarantine for 14 days and or isolate if they were positive for 10 to 14 days.
To mitigate the challenges with isolating student athletes, we have, as athletic trainers, have to understand this is a multi-department approach. As a certified athletic trainer, it is too much of a burden for one person to try to navigate this. At Concordia University, athletes that are infected or identified as sick are immediately placed in isolation. It is a dedicated space in residential life that is not currently occupied by any residents other than individuals that we need to quarantine or isolate. These dorm rooms have full Wi-Fi access so students can maintain their student status and be engaged in the classroom. It has full laundry services, and food will be delivered 3 times a day by Res Life individuals, so they are going to be fed. It is our commitment to our students on campus that if they become ill, that we have a multi-department approach in caring for them. A thorough cleaning process will also be initiated by our custodial services for the room that they are currently in, and the proper contact tracing is important at this point. We need to identify other individuals that will be asked to be quarantined, which means restricting their movement around campus, or isolated if they are ill, and remove them from contacting and infecting other individuals.
I think first and foremost, the most important thing when you're dealing with a student athlete that may be infected with COVID is get them isolated as soon as possible. All of our student athletes are instructed in our policies in terms of what to do if they potentially may have signs or symptoms of COVID. If they get a red pass for the day in their daily symptom check or an application, they're instructed to contact health services immediately, as well as sports medicine. We conduct all of our visits and our information sessions with the student athletes via telehealth to make sure that we can isolate them properly and make sure they get the proper care they need.
At Farmdale State College, the COVID return to play policy requires athletes who are infected to be self-isolated. Here at Farmdale State College, our policy is to isolate the dorm students in the dorms, in specific dorms by themselves, or if they're from home, they will isolate at home. We report every athlete that is infected to Health and Wellness, and they're required to have a COVID test done. Health and Wellness will then do the contact tracing and contact trace each athlete to their pods that they have participated in athletics with.
If we should get word that one of our athletes has tested positive, then we will make a phone call, and we have a team ready that pretty much will handle everything. But as far as we're concerned on the field, we will make sure that we have a check off of things that we need to check for. If they're if they were in close contact with the athlete, then they're gonna be excused from practice as well. We are actually making it mandatory that our athletes get tested. If they're positive, if they are symptomatic, or if they come in close contact, they have to get tested. They have to come back with a negative result before they're allowed to come back onto the field.
So if we were to sustain a COVID positive, or a student athlete was COVID positive, we, through the administration, can use contact tracing for the student athlete throughout their day. So there are seating charts that each of the teachers turn in for their classroom. The seating charts can be referenced based on where that COVID positive patient was sitting. And then we can take any of the students that are around that COVID positive through contact tracing and know that they had possibly been exposed. At that point, then that group of people could be removed from the population for the 14-day quarantine period. So that can affect athletics in the fact of other students that aren't athletes could potentially affect a student athlete just by being in class with them. So some parents have elected to maintain the virtual aspect of the education at this high school.